All right. It's another week, another What the F happened. This is a show where we rant, we rave, and we will argue in regards to what's happening in the economy, what's happening in the news, at least what you can actually believe or not believe in the fake news. But we're going to cover a whole bunch of things that aren't in the news because the more and more we do this show and the more and more we watch the news, we realize the news isn't telling you the truth. You can't handle the truth. That's the truth of it. But we're going to bring the truth to you, which comes from several research reports that we do called the FDIC.gov website, another one called the Social Science Research Network, and another one just called Economic Reports. So this show, which is all about the news, but what we're going to start doing is bringing you the real news, the behind the scenes news, the news that the stations, the news stations that aren't even owned by the right people, they're technically controlled. But anyway, we won't go there because TikTok will shut us down. But what we want to do is bring you the real truth, the real news, or get you as close as we can to that. So that's what we're going to hit today. Here are a couple of the topics. We're going to talk about bank failures. Oh, that's old news, Chris. We already knew the banks failed. No, you really don't know the whole truth behind that. What we're also going to talk about is we're going to talk about some reports that came out from the Social Science Research Network. We're going to then talk a little bit about the Fed. We're going to talk about electric cars, some things you don't know about electric cars. And Stephen, what was that other thing we were just talking about that I think is a really good topic? Credit cards that are backed by your car lien?
Oh, yeah.
So those are some of the things that Stephen and myself, and eventually the Lazy Cash, the one and only, will be bringing to you on today's episode of What the F Happened. We will be right back after this. All right, we are back at it. So welcome everybody from YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. Thanks for joining us for another episode, a weekly show that we do every single week called What the F Happened, where we rant, we rave, and we will argue about what's happening in the economy and behind the scenes of the news stations for the stuff that you can't handle. I'm joined here today with my partner in crime, Mr. Snaggy. What's happening down there in Florida?
Hey, we actually had a little cool front come through. So I got the long sleeve on today, rocking the Private Money Club. What is this? The Thrasher logo, right?
Yeah,
so
Thrasher.
This was one of the special edition ones we sent out to some people that had enrolled in one of our trainings. So just representing today and had a great Thanksgiving week. I hope all of you did as well. I was over on Captiva Island over in the Gulf of Mexico and kind of disconnected for a couple days. Kind of nice to get away and feeling the pain of disconnecting for a couple days this week. So it's a busy week, but keep the calls coming, keep the emails coming. Love talking to y'all. And for people like Brian Buscetto that are listening on YouTube, you, my friend, are an idiot. And I'll leave it at that for now. So time to get into some news.
Oh, I did say we will argue about these points as well. And there we go. Let's just hit it off right there with a left hook. But let's dive into this. So I think the first thing I want to talk about is a question that came in from Instagram. And someone was saying, hey, how do I become my own bank? So this is to you on Instagram, asking about how they BYOB or become their own bank. It's simple. Go to chrisnaugle.com and then watch the 90-minute video. When you're done watching the 90-minute video, schedule a call and we can dive into your needs and goals and figure out whether or not privatized banking and the infinite banking concept can help you become your own bank. But with that being said, let's dive into some important things that we've got. So oh, wow. Tracy Green coming in from TikTok. I can't ignore this one. The cobalt is not good for the environment that runs our electric cars. No shit. Really? Digging in the ground, taking cobalt, slave labor, if that's what you want to call it or not call it, like to get the cobalt to make all these electric cars, which are super green, that are all pretty much subsidized by the Inflation Reduction Act, or should I call it the new Green Deal or whatever the hell it is, but we called it the Inflation Reduction Act to push it over the finish line, like the bills are unable to do when they get to that point. They can't just push it over the finish line, but we won't go into football. So with that one, you're right. There was this huge push to go green with cars, as that was the solution, right? Get rid of all these gas guzzling V8s and bi-turbo V8s that we all drive. Sorry, I love my V8s, but get rid of them because they're bad for the environment. And let's bring in a bunch of electric cars. And let's have the government say by 2030, this percentage of cars on the road, we want to be green, electric. Now, where are the problems with that? Well, number one, cobalt, not clean. Okay, takes energy and gas and that dirty stuff to extract the cobalt from the earth. It's terrible for the environment. There's the only way that they can do it effectively, and some of you have already seen this, is pretty much slave labor. I thought slavery ended, but I guess in some countries it hasn't. But not only that, we're going to produce these batteries that go into these cars that really doesn't have a very good range, but we won't touch on that. That then when the batteries are done and need to be replaced, where do the old batteries go? Well, I don't know. Well, ask that guy. Nope, ask that guy. No one seems to be able to answer that one. So is that really the solution? Well, I don't know. Let's take it to the next step. Anyone that lives in California, how do you like those rolling blackouts, right? So now we're gonna increase from, I think we're right now 5 or 7% of the cars on the road are EV or hybrid. I think they count hybrid and EVs. And I like hybrids, Stephen. I don't know about you. I thought the Prius was a great little car, great on fuel, electric and gas. So when your battery dies, the gas engine kicks on and it's a super small 3 or 4 cylinder.
Fast lane. Every time I'm in the fast lane, person going 60s in a Prius. So keep them out of the fast lane. I'm good with them.
Listen, that's no problem. Just in the fast lane, you just put no Priuses allowed, not a problem. But I know that they have the ability to make hybrids that are pretty damn effective. Porsche did it with a 650 horsepower hybrid. It's got an electric battery and a 650 horsepower engine. Now that sounds exciting to me, but yet no, let's just push aside all these hybrids and let's go all electric. That requires a massive strain on the grid. Ask anybody in California, a grid that can't support growth in electric cars, that somehow the news isn't talking about this. I get a lot of white papers talking about what it's going to take to push the infrastructure to a point. And I know I did a YouTube and I also covered this on a prior WTF. But anyway, I'm not an expert in electric cars or power grids, but can you all sense the problem here? We're supposed to have all these EVs on the road, but the grid can't handle that many. You can't handle the truth. Stephen, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, it's starting to really show right now. I mean, dealerships. So MSNBC just came out yesterday with a 3-minute rant talking about how thousands of auto dealers are urging Biden to slow this whole electric vehicle mandate, just saying consumers don't want them. They said thousands of dealerships that represent multiple brands, not just one brand, domestic, international, but all across the board, now backed up 12 months with electric vehicles. Consumers don't want them. They're not buying them. They're offering up to $15,000 in rebates from these manufacturers, $7,500 in federal tax credits, so $22,500, and people still don't want them. So it's not only an issue of everything you're talking about, but also an issue of just demand where it's just getting shoved down the throats. And if you don't realize, people don't like when things are shoved down your throat. People want to be able to analyze, make their own decisions. It's called freedom. It's called the United States of America. Maybe we get back to that at some point.
Here's an interesting one. David Jonathan Phillips, coming in from TikTok, said, I drive a Chevy Cruze diesel. It's like gold right now. Now, listen, back many, many years ago when I was working as an advisor, I had a BMW 328 diesel. That car legitimately got 45 miles to the gallon. This Chevy Cruze that Jonathan's or Daniel is driving, that probably gets 50. They have the technology to make diesels so freaking efficient. I mean, they do it in Europe. They do it all across the world, but not so much here. No. Let's get rid of the diesel cars. Remember when there was all those lawsuits against Volkswagen and a bunch of other ones saying, "Oh, you guys reported the wrong mileage. It's not really getting that." And then all of a sudden, diesels went away. Diesels are, like he said, gold right now. Like, if you got a diesel car, it's incredibly efficient. And not only that, like, we didn't have to go all electric to make that happen. What if we did diesel engines, small little 3-cylinder diesels, all the torque in the world, and then we mix that with batteries, if we must go with the hybrid just to appease the dude. But anyway, what if we did that? How many miles could your car get? Could you go 600, 700 miles on a single tank of gas? Could we push 800? And could we get 50 miles to the gallon? That'd be pretty sweet, wouldn't it? And we wouldn't have to worry about mining for cobalt so much. I mean, sure, there'd be electric, or batteries in it, but maybe not this huge push. But I want to go back to what Stephen said there, David. Thanks for your comment. I want to hit on what we're seeing. Does anyone remember? Some of you might not be old enough, but does anyone remember the Chevy Volt? Stephen, you remember that car?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That was actually a pretty sweet little car. Chevy rolled out many, many moons ago the Chevy Volt, and it was an all-electric car. How did that car sell, Stephen? You don't remember, right?
No. Where is it? Is it still around?
Yeah. Well, they made a bunch of them, but they didn't sell. And they offered massive rebates. They pretty much gave the damn Chevy Volt away. And I want to be clear, the Chevy Volt was a cool-looking car, but nobody wanted it. It had a bunch of issues with range and the variability of how long the battery lasted. They stopped making diesels or started capuching diesels because, they're reporting the wrong mileage. Now, how about the Ford Lightning, right? That new, awesome, you guys heard about it not a while ago. It was like this crazy F-150, all electric, crazy torque, super fast, or the Hummer EV. They made a big deal. The dude was driving it and everything. Like, those vehicles that are electric, and any of you that own electric cars, let me just ask. Yeah, Daniel said I would buy a Volt. Yeah, they're pretty sweet, right? They're probably better than a lot of them today. But anyway, back to this. Like, let me just ask you, if you lived in Buffalo, New York, right now it's about 20 degrees and snowing, okay? But it's going to get colder. And it was in the teens or 0 degrees. Do you think your battery is going to last as long as what they told you? Heck no. My buddy bought an F-150 Lightning, thought it was the coolest damn thing, kept it like 3 months, traded it in. He's like, man, I got to drive to Rochester, about an hour trek, and that thing doesn't get any range. They said it gets this many miles, and I'm actually only showing this, and it's summertime. What's that thing going to do in the winter? All I'm trying to say is it was literally a house of cards from the beginning. We should have learned from the Chevy Volt. We should have learned from Toyota's Prius and how cool and great of a concept a hybrid was. We should have learned back when diesels were being made on almost every level. Mercedes has a ton of diesels in Europe, and they get incredible gas mileage. They have to, because in Europe, gas prices are through the roof. But yet we take these drastic, radical shifts that are unsustainable, not good for the environment. And when we got the solution right in front of us, hell, like, you really want to go there? They make cars that run on water. Like, how efficient is that? Oh, you'll never hear about that because, well, it doesn't pay anybody. Kind of like why you've never heard of the infinite banking concept and how you can specially design a whole life policy so that it pays lower commissions so you have more money. Oh, no, because no one can get paid as much, right? So when you really think about this whole EV push, this massive electric push, okay, is it sustainable, number one? Number two, is it really clean and good for the environment? Okay, and is it something that the consumers want? Well, I think you can answer all of those right here and right now in 2023. Before the year even ends, I think you can answer every one of those questions. Matter of fact, if you can't, Stephen can, or you can just go to the dealer and look at how many EVs they have. I just dropped off our car this morning. Like I'll get into this, but I just did a crazy podcast. If none of you have ever checked my podcast out, I would say this would be the episode you must watch. And the episode is basically the simple secret to how you can make a lot more money. That's the title of the podcast. So you can get on that. It's everywhere. It's called the Money School Podcast. Check it out. But it all stems from me dropping my car off, talking to the guy, my buddy who I used to skateboard with, who runs the service department, about his people. His people, like in his service department, 46 of them are so backed up. They got 100 cars in the lot waiting, 100 cars waiting to get worked on. And he's got 46 people. He says, we're fully staffed. We got 100 cars out back. I said, are you guys just that busy? He said, well, yeah, we're busy. But he said, that's not the problem. The problem is productivity. He said, we've literally changed our whole comp model for these guys. These guys are paid a base, okay? And it's a pretty good base. And then they're paid on production. So the more cars they get, they're compensated on that. And every week we tally that up. And I said, well, what does that look like? Because that's a hell of an opportunity. And I'll get back to the EVs and everything else, but I got to talk to you about this, and he tells me, he says, okay, well, we sat down, we do a meeting every Friday, and every Friday I break this down to him. I say, okay, so if you guys worked an extra hour every day for 5 days, that's 5 hours a week. Here's how much more money you would make. It was $1,000 a week based on productivity and based on what he showed them. And then he said, okay, if you only did 3 hours a week, you'd make about an extra $500 a week. Now, that's not just a little bit of money, right? That's $4,000 a month. And then he talked a little bit about, like, they had no longer, because they had to take it away because nobody showed up. They had the ability to come in on Saturdays and basically pound out some production to get some more bonuses. And they were paid overtime to come in Saturdays. So they're paid overtime and they get more productivity credits, which those credits, like I said, are $500 to $1,000 every week per service man or woman who works on the cars, as long as they hit their productivity numbers. And I said, that's incredible. I said to him, how many of the 46 actually do that? How many stay an extra hour or two, or how many come in on Saturdays? Who can tell me what the answer was? How many do you think my friend Brian said showed up or stayed an extra hour? Can anyone tell me?
I'm going to go with 0.
You're right, Stephen. 0. And he said, that's right, Sean, 0. I love Facebook users said 3, and so a bunch of you said 10%, 4. Joe said 0. You're absolutely correct. 0. Where logically, like, how am I thinking about this wrong? Because, I've gone through several recessions. Let's just go back to the .com. I owned retail stores. I was an entrepreneur. I owned skateboard, snowboard shops. I had 3 locations during that period of time, and I was a pro snowboarder. And then I remember when the .com crash hit, my business fell 30%. Then they ripped up the street it was called Orchard Park Road. Shauna knows this. We had a store that we had just opened up for that winter season. It was a boutique, awesome snowboard, skateboard shop. And then they ripped the road up. Plus, we were in the midst of a recession. I needed to get a job. So I landed in Wall Street, and I was pond scum in the middle, just dialing and passing them off to the people in the big offices. But I watched these advisors in the big offices, and I watched what they did. They'd get there right before the bell rang for the market opening. They'd leave for 2 hours for lunch, and they'd be gone by 4:30 or 5 o'clock. And they made $300 to over $1 million, these guys made. And I said, you know what? How do I get one of those offices? And I figured it out. I showed up at 7 o'clock. I pounded out the paperwork before the bell rang. And then during lunch, when everybody left and went out, I couldn't afford to go to lunch. I literally had to pack mulberries in Tupperware from the tree out front, and I had brought those to work for lunch. So I just ate my mulberries and my peanut butter jelly sandwich my mom brought me, and I dialed the phone during lunch, and people answered because they were on break. And then when everybody left at the end of the day, I went out to whatever hour at night, and I saw people at their kitchen tables. I would drive 2 hours. I remember countless meetings out by where Shauna lives, and even further out in Springville, in Wales, and all these different places. I would drive there after hours, because that's when people get off work. And I would meet with them at their kitchen table, sometimes getting home at 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And I did this consistently and persistently. What do you think happened? I became the number 3 advisor. Why not number 1? Because I was part of a group that number 1 was the guy that owned that group. His name was Mark. I couldn't get ahead of the guy that got production on me. Okay. They got all the credits on me. It was almost impossible. So I was number 3. Back to these techs. They have the ability to make an extra $500 to $1,000. Now, folks, I want all of you to look at yourself in the mirror, or I just want you to think about your life. What could you be doing in your job, in your business, that basically is doing what everybody else is unwilling to do? For the example of these servicemen and women, like, they could just work an extra hour a day and make an extra $1,000 in extra on top of their salary, just in production bonuses. How many of you have that opportunity, and how many of you would take advantage of it? Now, I know all of you probably would, but seriously, How many of you would really do it, not just saying they would? Because if out of 46 over at the Mercedes dealer, 0 did, I have very little faith that anybody that tells me they would actually do it. I'd want the proof. I told Shauna yesterday, we were in a really important meeting, and I said, I'm going to hold you to a really high standard. I'm not going to judge you based on what you say you can do. I'm going to judge you on what you actually fucking do. And that's the secret. You want the simple secret to making a shitload more money? It's the easiest time I think, in history where you can make tons of money. Move up in a company faster than any other time in history. And all you need to do is do a little bit more. Just a wee little bit more. An extra hour a day for these people. $1,000 a week. $4,000 a month. This is at Mercedes, service men and women. Like, that work on cars. Like, what is your position? What could you be doing? When everybody leaves at 5 o'clock, if you stayed till 6 and pounded out work, how much more productivity could you get done? And would you be compensated? And if you're not compensated, what if you went to your boss or your manager and you said, hey, boss, here's what I'm thinking about doing. I got this great idea. I can put more money on the company's, income statement. I can make more money. And here's how. And this is what I want to do. Can I be compensated if I move the needle? What manager or owner of a company would not say, of course, if you do this, I will pay you that? If anyone on my team came to me and said that, I would absolutely entertain that. I'd be like, for sure. If you can increase 10%, I will pay you on that 10%. What business owner or manager would not entertain that? But when there's 0 people that ask that question, when there's 0 people that go out and do that extra work or do what everybody else is unwilling to do, because here's what people do. They see everybody leaving and they get in line and they follow. It's kind of like right now why everybody's piling money in the markets at the all-time highs. And you know what you're doing? You're just following the herd off the freaking cliff, because that's exactly where you're going to be going, right off the cliff. You know why I know that? Let's go into the next thing. Sorry, I'm all over the place, Stephen, but I just had to get that rant out of the way, and then we're going to hit some questions.
It's good. And can I just show one thing? Are we sitting on the EV thing?
Please.
Yeah, so just 2 things.
We'll wrap up the EV thing.
Yeah, one of our marketers, so a lot of our pages you see and graphics and a lot of our shirt designs come from a really cool marketer, Robert Sislo. So shout out to Sislo and everything he does. But he just posted this on Facebook last night. If you just do what no one else wants to do and view that as opportunity, you will win. So simple. Exactly what you're saying, Chris.
Love it.
Just thought that was so cool. And this was a video I played when you were gone a couple weeks ago, but it's so relevant because when it comes to EVs, it's like not only everything we've been talking about, but it's also like what happens when things go wrong. So California, rolling blackouts, Texas with energy issues, a hurricane comes, there's no power, a snowstorm comes, there's no power. What do? You're stuck. Like you have no way to do it. And then when you're traveling and everybody else is traveling, so I took this video 3 weeks ago when I was coming back from Tallahassee, but oh no. Sorry, it won't let me share all of a sudden the screen. I'll work on that. But it was a video of just an electric vehicle, all the Teslas lined up on the turnpike waiting to charge their cars. And it was just like a line of like 20 Teslas just waiting. And each car takes 20 minutes to charge. They don't make it very long. It's like there's so many issues with these things. But anyways, all right, Chris, keep rolling.
I can't go into the next topic because now I'm fired up. Because I'm reading these comments on TikTok. And I got to just read these, and I'm not going to call out the people's names because I'm going to get nasty here. I really am, because now I'm fucking pissed. Let me just read these. Okay. One person says, I've done it, referring to doing the extra. And I proved to myself the tax hit is too big and not worth it. Okay. I'm going to keep going and then we're going to hit this. Overtime is taxed higher, but at the end of the day, it's all about putting more money in your bucket. I like that. I'll agree with that. Okay. They make $200 an hour as tax. That's supposing companies will let me stay and make overtime. Absolutely. You got to ask the question. But for that person putting that, his name's he's on here as Daddy. Have you ever asked? Have you ever gone to your manager or your boss and actually asked if you could prove yourself by increasing productivity by doing something? I do this all the time. I own a company, but I go to my partners and I come up with crazy ideas and I say, hey, if I increase, can I take part in some of that increase? Okay. So what's different from me than somebody working for a company? You just got to ask the question. Let's see. They're here. I got to get to the ones that pissed me off. Let's see. At this point, I need money to pay bills now. If it's all taxed anyway, nope. Fuck that. You got a lot to learn, person. So hold on. I'm going to keep going right. Shouldn't have to work 50 hours to make enough to survive. We are taxed on every dollar we make, save, spend, inherit, pass on. True. Okay. You live. It is what it is. Hold on. Ah, crap. I just lost it. Shit. This one is the one that fired me up. I'm not going to read the name. Everybody should be able to work 30 hours a week and live just fine. Was this country built by working 30 hours a week? Were businesses built when the entrepreneurs and the dreamers and the believers and the doers actually only put in 30 hours a week and looked at their clock and said, 30 hours, I shouldn't have to work any fucking harder? Is that what built this fucking country that you live in, that you enjoy freedom? You're fucking worried about taxes? We are at the lowest tax rate you will ever be at in your fucking life. Get used to it. Stop thinking that every dollar you make is taxed. Of course it is. Get used to it. Because you know what? The Serenity Prayer says, focus on the things that you can control and not the things you can't. Know the fucking difference. You can't control taxes. There's nothing you can do to change them. You're going to pay them. You should only pay your fair share. You should maybe get a CPA that knows how to take some deductions, because you're probably just taking standard deductions. Because you know what? When I asked that Brian guy over at Mercedes, I asked him that question. You know what he said when he showed them how much more money they'd make? He's like, yeah, but Brian, that's not how much we take home. No shit. You got to pay taxes. I got to pay taxes. Steven has to pay taxes. All of us have to pay taxes. And you want health insurance. Oh, I need health insurance. If I get hurt and something, I got to, I can't afford the big medical bills. Great. So you got to pay for health insurance. Oh, and the company kicks in X amount of money for your health insurance, but you're bitching about the little bit. That's not what we get to take home. You bunch of fucking pansy pussy fuckers. Wake up. Wake up. The opportunity is in front of you. It has always been in front of you, but yet you step over the dollar to pick up the penny because you're worried about paying taxes. You don't want to work harder because it's all taxed. I don't know what to tell you. That's just the way it is. We all pay taxes. We all pay taxes. And you know what? It doesn't stop the dreamers, the believers, the entrepreneurs from going out and paying more in taxes because they make more money. I can't believe that we have gotten to the point where people don't want to do anything extra because they think they deserve or are entitled to getting enough to live just on 30 hours a week. Work 50 hours a week. Work 100 hours a week. Do it in something you love. If you don't like your job, fucking quit and go out and do something you love. Find your passion and go out there and solve people's problems. Some of you folks need to fucking grow up. Some of you folks need to really come out of fairy tale land that the dude has created and realize that you are living in a world where you can control everything in your life. You can go out and do as much as you want, make as much as you want, have as much as you want, but you got to work for it. And that's always been the way. It's been the way back to the ancestors that created all of this. You ever met a farmer? You ever talk to a real Texan that literally goes out in the field and does that? You ever been to Wyoming and talked to people that raise cattle? Do they say, oh, I should be able to live on 30 hours a week? I'm done with my rant, Stephen. That's bullshit. And that's exactly what Brian over at Mercedes said. They say, oh, that's not what we take home. And that reverberates. All the people that are coming in from TikTok. This is why I have to sometimes ask, why am I even streaming on TikTok? If these are the people on TikTok, these are not the people I can help. And I'm not saying that to all the folks on TikTok. And that's why I didn't give their names, because now I'm going to have a bunch of haters. Good. End the live. You don't belong here. You folks that were saying that about you got to pay taxes. Oh, if I make more, I got to pay more in taxes. Why don't you set up a company that does something you're passionate about? Get yourself some deductions instead of just taking standard deductions. Why don't you read the tax code or read some of the things or study some YouTube videos about how the wealthy pay their fair share, how they get deductions that you're not getting to offset that extra tax you're going to pay.
Just slow clap. I'm getting texts. I'm getting messages. They say, Chris,
it makes me fucking sick to my stomach. It makes me sick to my stomach, but it also excites me because you know what? For all of you that are on here that actually aren't the people that were just saying that, you firsthand just saw the greatest opportunity of your lifetime. If that's what they think and that's not what you think, you can literally go out there and create a financial future that you never even thought possible. You don't believe you can? I wake up every single day and I say to my wife, I'm like, I can't believe that we've been able to accomplish this. I can't believe that, back in the day when I was younger, I'd look at this development and say, I could never afford to live in there. I could never afford to drive this truck or this car. I could never afford to have any of that. And those same people that are bitching and moaning about, oh, we should be able to pay for everything on 30 hours a week. You know what? They're hating on me right now. But you know what I did that they didn't do? I worked 80 to 100 hours a week. I went out there and I literally took risks nobody else was unwilling to do. I did in Wall Street what they were unwilling to do. That's how I got where I'm at. And you know what else I did? I fucking failed a lot. And I will continue to fail. But I will keep pushing the envelope. I will keep doing what is necessary to chase my dreams and to solve a lot of people's problems. You know whose problems I'm solving? Not the people that think that paying a little bit more in taxes because they make a lot more money is a problem. Those aren't people I can help. And I won't help them. I don't want to help them because they got a mindset problem. I can fix a lot of problems financially, but I can't fix your broken scarcity fucking mindset. Let me give you some other facts of what's going to take your asses down if you don't pay attention to this. Social Science Research Network. Okay, this is a research report that was just put out. 186 banks are at the risk of failing or collapsing due to rising rates and high proportions of uninsured deposits. So what are high proportions of uninsured deposits? Anything over 250,000 or more. Okay, then an economic report came out talking about what happened right after all those banks failed earlier in this year. Silicon Valley, Signature Bank, Republic Bank, UBS, I think it was, and then recently that Citizens Bank. Those are the ones you heard about in the news. And if you add that up, that was not 186 banks because these banks haven't failed yet. So if half of these banks or a third of these banks or 1/8 of these banks go belly up, insolvent, is the FDIC going to keep bailing everybody out? Everybody that has more than 250,000 in their accounts thinking, oh, you know what? Silicon Valley, they had more than 250. We bailed them out. Yeah, because a lot of those people were lobbyists. Did you read about whose accounts they bailed out? Like, you can't just bail one and not the others. But you know what? When more banks go down, I guarantee you, your money will not be protected again above and beyond 250,000. So let me give you some advice before I go into this next report about how many banks have actually failed, because I've got a report on that too. You don't think we do our research, folks? We do our research. And we have factual reports. You know where this report came from? FDIC.gov. Okay? The FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the one that's supposed to back up all your bank deposits, up to $250,000. You see the little placard when you walk in the bank and get your dumb suckers, right? So what is the chance that the Fed and the government are going to keep bailing all the people out that think, oh, I got more than 250, it'll be fine? Probably slim to none. So here's how you fix that problem. You go to your bank where you have more than $250,000 and you take any excess out and you go down the street to another bank and you put in to that bank. If you've got a lot of money, several million or several 100,000, great. You're going to just need a couple more banks and credit unions and community banks. Spread that shit out. Play the cup game. Okay. You got a bunch of different cups and you just move the cups around and like, oh, no money in that one. You just move them all around. But yet some people are like, oh, my relationships with this bank. Oh, I got to keep bigger deposits here because so that they can give me loans. Why are you taking loans from the bank anyway? You clearly haven't learned how to be your own bank. You haven't learned the infinite banking concept. Why? Oh, because it takes extra time. And, I shouldn't have to do that to live on my 30 hours a week. Anyway, I'm getting off that one. So let me give you some facts. Okay. This is from FDIC.gov. You guys can fact check this. Just go to FDIC and type in bank failures in brief. Here we go. There were 566 bank failures from 2001 through 2023. Oh, you didn't see that in the news? But Stephen, the news clearly reported on 566 bank failures, right?
I haven't seen it.
Nobody was counting, but clearly they did. So what we do is we go through and we look at how many banks failed, but we look at when they failed. Most of the failures come in economic turmoil. What do I mean by that? I mean recessions. I mean what is exactly going to happen probably next year, because we're going into a really crazy election. We're going into an election with an inverted yield curve right now, one of the biggest we've seen, and that's never been wrong. Okay, that always points that the future will more than likely be in a recession. And I could keep going on, but that's boring. Watch my YouTube videos. I cover it every day. So here, there's two numbers that they look at: total assets of the banks that failed, and then how many bank failures. So let's just go back to 2007. So 2007, how many banks failed? 0. But how many total assets did the banks have? I think this is in trillions, 300 billions, or probably billions, 373,589 billion. We're in total assets in millions. So yeah, anyway, doesn't matter. But anyway, in 2008, 25 banks failed. You guys probably remember some of those, right? Remember Lehman Brothers, but you only remember the ones that were in the news. And then by 2009, 140 banks failed. Shit, I don't remember 149 banks failing in 2009. In 2010, 157 banks failed. That was a recession, folks. And then it trailed down. 2011, 92 banks. 2012, 51 banks. 2013, 24 banks. And then 18 banks. And then 8, and then 5, and then 8, and then 0. In 2018, 0 banks failed. Wow, it's a good year. Next year, 2019, 4, and then hold on. That brings us right to where we're at now. How many assets do the banks have now compared to then? 548, I think we'll just say million, 548,705,000. I think it's billion. I'm just not doing the math. It actually is definitely million or billion in 2022. And how many banks have failed so far? Now, hold on. I got to take you back to 2007, right before the Great Recession. How many banks failed? 0. How many failed in 2006? 0. How many failed in 2005? 0. How many failed in 2021? 0. How many failed in 2022? 0. Assets spiked, okay? Just like they did. Here you go. Assets spiked in 2007, just like they did in 2022. See them? Okay, you guys can see those. This line over here is there we go, 2007, and then on the other side of the page is 2022. Are you seeing a trend here? 0 in 25 or 2005, 0 in 2006, 0 in 2007, and then 25 in 08, 140 in 09, and then 157 in 2010. Fast forward, 2021, 0 banks failed. 2022, 0 banks. 2023, 5. How many are in danger? According to that study, 186. It's record time, folks. We're going to break some records. But you know what? It's not the only record that got broke. Not the only one. Stephen, Black Friday. You want to talk a little bit about Black Friday?
Yeah, I mean, it's coming out. The reports are coming in from this past Friday, Black Friday. They're saying it's record-breaking numbers. Online spending reached a record $9.8 billion, up 7.5% from last year. And it's an interesting topic. Cyber Monday rings in $12.4 billion in sales. So these numbers are really adding up. And it's interesting because if you look at all the reports, credit card balances have exceeded $1 trillion as of a couple months ago. So record highs, people using credit cards, record highs. Let me pull up some of the stuff as we go through it, just so you can kind of visualize it as we go.
Yeah.
So
here, let me hit one thing. I mean, Black Friday, right? In a time when people are really hurting because of inflation, and there's record credit card debts right now. We just peaked over $1 trillion. Yeah. There you go. Thanks, Stephen. Took the words right out of my mouth. He put up an article about credit card debts hitting record of $1 trillion. Go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah. And then so you have that. And then on the other hand, it's like, okay, well, people are putting money on credit cards. That's fine. Like, people are using them right. But then you look at what's happening. People are putting money on credit cards, but the delinquency rate right now is skyrocketing. And this was as of Q3. And we had talked about this a little while back, how, people were, I was saying a couple months ago, I think it's going to be record sales for Black Friday into the holiday season, even with everything going on and people hurting and the large majority of American households saying they're in a worse financial position than they were a couple of years ago. And they're making less money now because of inflation over the last couple of years. Their raises haven't kept up with it. So financially, nobody should be doing well. And I was like, there's going to be record sales, watch and see. And people are arguing with me. No way. People don't have the money to spend. I think they're putting it on they're maxing these credit cards out right now. It's one of those like last kabangs, where you just go out in a ball of flames. And I really think that's what's happening. People are like, listen, I know I'm not going to be able to recover from this anyways. Let me just go out and spend all this money and I'll deal with the consequences later and just not thinking about it. And we'll see if that happens in 2024. But that's what I have a feeling is coming. And some of these banks are getting smart. Like I saw this week. This bank came out. So most credit cards, you guys know how credit cards work. It's an unsecured line of credit. They give it to you. If you don't pay your bills, then basically it just hurts your credit score. They can put judgments and liens against you, things like that. But typically they write that stuff off at some point and it just affects your credit score. But this bank right here said, all right, you want a credit card, we're going to give it to you, but you're going to secure it by your car. So credit cards are no longer just this unsecured line of credit. They're actually making a credit card now that's tied to your car title. So if you don't pay your credit card bills, what's going to happen? Well, you're going to look out in the driveway and you're going to see a tow truck hooked up to your car, taking it away because it got repossessed, for not paying your credit card bills. So to me, that's just kind of credit. And here's their pitch on this is it's, pay the credit card monthly and have no rates, or if you need to carry a balance, it's only, Chris, 29.88%.
What a freaking bargain, man. What a bargain.
Only 29.88% for somebody that can't even afford it anyways. And they're comparing it to a title loan that they're saying is 291%. So it's just like, what are we doing here? Like the financial position you must be in to have to do this cannot be good. Like there must be better ways out of this. So just be careful when you see stuff like this popping up.
Oh, I want to hit a couple comments here because this is remember we said we're going to bring you the real truth, not what you hear in the news. And a couple people here on TikTok said some things that you did not see in the news. Joe Fanara, I believe I might have got it wrong, but he said in-store sales went down 33%. So whether or not you did hear that, remember, online sales went up 7.8%. Okay. And in-store sales fell 33%. In-store, online, which basically would bring me to this one where Daddy said Black Friday weekend online buyers were higher, but they still fell 60% lower than predicted. So you're just being told a lie. You're being told a lie online. It's false hope. It almost should be illegal, but it's not. It's okay.
I don't know where this is coming from. I mean, this was as of Saturday analyzing. I mean, it's saying record energized shoppers break one-day holiday sales record. It's saying in person was up a little more than 1%, while e-commerce was up 8.5%. So everything I've seen showing stuff's way up in sales.
Yeah, so I don't know where the data is coming from. I mean, I'm going to go with yours, Stephen, just because you showed it. But but the whole idea is people are still spending a lot of money. There's a saying, and I don't know who said it, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but once a luxury, now a necessity, or something like once a luxury realized is now a necessity. In other words, and I'll speak, to my life, like things that I looked at as being a luxury, like hell, back when I was young, you had to have like a luxury car to have air conditioning or power windows. But now all of a sudden, like you'd never think of cranking a window. I bet you kids now, 16, 17-year-olds now, if they got in a car with a crank window, they wouldn't even know how to operate the window. It took some freaking forearm strength and some shoulder strength to roll those windows down. That's just how that's what I grew up on. Some of you are even older than me, and you can all remember, you got in your car on a hot summer day, you were sweating your butt off because, there was no air conditioning. If you turned the vent on high, it just blew hot air. So you just got going and you rolled the window down. It's actually pretty peaceful. Listen to the window, feel the wind in the back seat. This is how I grew up. Crank windows, no power seats. My God, what was that? No air conditioning. I grew up in a house without air conditioning. In the summertime, one of my favorite things, especially at night to do, was to open all the windows, listen to the crickets, listen to all the animals outside. It was peaceful while an oscillating fan blew air on me. Okay. That's how I grew up. And I thought nothing of it. I actually absolutely loved it. Yeah, some nights were brutally hot. You take all the sheets off, you woke up, you're sweating. But man, that oscillating fan, every time that fan came back, you couldn't just wait till it got back around the next one. How many of you can relate? How many of you on here can relate? And many of you can't, because you're like, what the hell is he talking about? Like air, I thought everybody had air conditioning. Once a luxury, now a necessity. You see, now I could never even think of having a house without air conditioning. I can't even fathom a vehicle without air conditioning. Hell, I can't even fathom a vehicle with crank windows anymore, but I can't fathom a vehicle without like cruise control. You see, this is what's happened.
I grew up in a house without heat, actually, Chris. Even worse, in my opinion.
Do you ever even need heat?
No. I grew up in Virginia, so Southwest Virginia in the mountains. Yeah, but it got cold there. Yeah, we had a wood burning stove, so I was every couple times a week out there chopping wood to fill the fire, and that's the only way we were heated. So
there's a bunch of you that relate. We all can relate, right? But now, like we've realized the luxury. We've gotten used to the luxury, so now it's a necessity, and that necessity costs money. Netflix costs money. Everything that we've come to just assume is like the norm all costs more money. But the problem is people don't want to give things up that they've gotten accustomed to. I certainly don't want to give air conditioning up, and one of the problems that I see, and that's already happening, is as the economy slows, and the Fed's doing, their part in trying to do that. I didn't read this to you, but I don't know how many of you have ever heard me say this, but I'll say it again. The Fed is right now shedding $90 billion a month from their balance sheet. So what that means is $90 billion is disappearing from the central banking system. $90 billion is being sucked out of the economy every month by the Fed, on top of all the unprecedented rate increases, on top of the fact that inflation is still high. Matter of fact, right in top line news, U.S. GDP grew at 5.2% rate in the third quarter, even stronger than first indicated. Basically the whole thing is inflation slowing down, or is it kind of stalled? Is the Fed going to raise rates in December, or are they going to hold them? Everything in the markets right now, everything in your, if you're younger, you think that the S&P 500 can never fail you. You think that everything's good because you've witnessed the longest bull run in history. Literally, like never before. You've witnessed the longest bull run in history. And there are a lot of younger folks who don't even know what a recession is. They don't know the impact of a recession. They don't even have the slightest inkling of what that will mean for themselves, for their job, for their family. But they're soon going to. And those are probably a lot of the same people, like my TikTok folks, who said I should only have to work 30 hours, in other words, and be able to afford. Now, I might have taken that out of context, which is why I didn't say their name. Like, maybe we should only we're in one of the wealthiest countries in the world. Maybe we should only have to work 30 hours to be able to afford to live. But the point I was making is not how many hours you work. It's how many you should want to work to get ahead. It's how many you should want to work to literally have an opportunity that so many other people will never have in their life because they're unwilling to do what you're willing to do. That was my point. So when you look at the economy, it's broken. It's fragile. You can see it everywhere. The Fed is going to bring inflation down to their target of 2% at any cost. And that cost will be a recession. Mark my words, folks. Mark my words. You don't think we're going to be in a recession because you're watching too much news. You're watching Jim Cramer, who gets it wrong. There's got to be a report out there of how many times, percentage of how often Cramer gets it wrong. But yet Cramer's the first one. That son of a bitch is being paid to say what he says. I don't care what anyone says, because he gets it wrong so much and nobody holds him accountable for it. But yet then he's like, oh, we're going to soft land. We're going to be just fine. Everything's going to be good. 2024 is going to be the best year for the markets. But I see it all the time. That's pathetic. I don't know how he doesn't get sued. Oh, he doesn't get sued because it hasn't happened yet. But it will. And if everybody on here doesn't have their house in order, if you're not willing to do the hard work, if you're not willing to go out there and literally do what you've never thought possible. Let me transition. How many of you, and I'm not going to be able to find it, but there was a movie. It was an older movie, probably 2000s. And there was one scene And I want all of you to just listen to my words. You don't need to know what movie it is. But there was one scene where a football coach took his leader, like his main player, who was like a big kid. It was just a high school team. And he called him out and he had him come over in the middle. And he basically blindfolded him. And then he got down and he did, he walked across the football field. He was only told he needs to go to the 20-yard mark. And there was a kid on his back, right? Laying on his back against his. So he was crawling, never putting his knees down, but crawling with a kid on his back who the coach thought weighed, I think, 130 or 140 pounds. And because the kid was blindfolded, the lead player, he kept going and he started saying it hurts. And his teammates, when he crossed the 20-yard line, they started being like, holy crap. And he just kept going. And the coach then kept pushing him and pushing him and pushing him and saying, you're almost there. You're almost there. In his mind, he didn't meet the 20-yard mark. But if he had the blindfold off, he would have stopped at the 20-yard or maybe the 30 because he would have been like, I got there. I've arrived. But he was blindfolded. So he had no idea where on the field he was. But the coach kept pushing him and pushing him. And he pushed through pain. He pushed through what some would call suffering. And then he collapsed. And the kid got off his back and he took the blindfold off and he said, look up. The coach said, look up. He was in the end zone. He had literally crawled an entire football field, something that none of those kids thought even possible, while having someone on his back that supposedly weighed 130. And the kid kept interrupting the coach. Coach. Yes. And the coach was like, well, yeah, what? I don't weigh. Or I think he said, I weigh 160 pounds. The only thing holding all of us back is your mind. The only thing holding you back is you yourself. You want to bitch that you don't have enough money? You want to bitch that you don't have the car that you've always dreamed of having? You want to bitch that you don't live in the house you want? That's because your mindset has not allowed you to have it. You're the only thing holding yourself back. You should keep listening to the news. You keep listening to Kramer. You keep listening to people that literally are just basically lying to you. Advisors who are lying to you, telling you it's all going to be okay. We're going to soft land. We're not going into a recession. That's not going to happen. That Chris Naugle guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Great. Put your money on the line. There's all these betting sites. So let's do this right here. Stephen, be my witness. Shauna, be my witness. I'm going to put $1,000 on the line. $1,000 of my own money, betting that by November of next year, we will be in a recession. I hope that's all we're in. I hope we're not in a civil war. I hope we're not in World War III. But let's just bet $1,000 that we will be in a recession next year. Put your money where your mouth is, or put up or shut up. I know we will be. I'm not saying that is a good thing. I'm not trying to instill fear in you. I'm just trying to wake your asses up. So you get out there and you do what's necessary now before it's too late, so that you actually take your gains out of your 401k or move them to the sideline in your 401k to stable value or treasury, so that you don't lose everything you've worked so hard to have. You're running out of time, folks. You really are. I don't know how many more times I can warn all of you. A lot of you have already taken advantage of this. But pretty soon the warnings aren't going to be warnings anymore. Pretty soon it's going to be reality. When you get your 401k statement, which you never look at, you're always waiting for the statement to come, or you barely ever look at it, and you get it, and all of a sudden it's down 20%, and then 30, and then 40, and then maybe 50, and maybe 60. And just so you all know, the drawdown effect, when they tell you that it's a long haul, it's just a paper loss, just always remember that if you lose 40%, it takes 63%, I think it is, to make back just the 40 you lost. When you lose 20, it takes 25 to make back the original 20. As you lose money, paper loss, your money is a lot less, which means it has to work a lot harder to just get back to where you were. Is that what you want? You want to have to work harder? All of you, so many of you already said, oh, I only want to work 30 or 40 hours. Well, do you want your money to have to work harder just to get back what you lose? Because you were stupid and didn't listen and didn't see the signs and didn't take action and failed to actually do something about it? Because somebody else that doesn't care about your money, doesn't care about your family's financial future, tells you, oh, it's a paper loss. It'll be fine. The average return of the S&P 500 is 7 point whatever. You're gonna be fine. You're in this for the long haul. Until you're not, until your emotions kick in, until you lose your job, until you can't put food on the table for your family. You can't make your mortgage payment. And then what are you going to do? You're going to say, oh, my advisor says I shouldn't take money out of the market. It's down. Like, we're in this for the long haul. Fuck that. You're going to take the money out of your 401k because you have to. Don't wait till you have to do it. I'm done, Stephen. I don't have anything else to say. All I'll say is all of you should join us at 1 p.m. this afternoon for a really, really amazing wealth webinar that we're going to be doing 1 p.m. Eastern. You just go to chrisnaugle.com, scroll down, register for the wealth webinar. 0 cost. There's no cost. I get people on Facebook all the time saying, oh, another scam artist trying to, charge us money. And I said this to this lady the other day. I said, fuck you. And I said that. I can't believe it get taken down. I said, this is free. I'm not charging for this. This is free. And she sort of apologized after that, but it's like that's the sentiment, that's the mindset of people. They're so fast to just like come down on somebody when they don't even read the post, they don't even watch the video. Don't be that person. Don't be the hater. And if you are the hater, I'll save a hug for you. Stop worrying about the noise and the other people. Start going out there and solving people's problems so that your problems get solved. Anything else, Stephen?
No, you need a handheld mic so you can just drop it. Looking out of the way.
When I heard that at the Mercedes.
Wild times, man. That's all I know is wild times.
Yep. We'll see a bunch of you at 1 o'clock this afternoon. Till then, this has been another episode of What the F Happened. And I'm sure some of you are like, what the F?
Get in the private money club. That's all I got to say, man. That's where the cool kids are. See you there.
See you next time.